Hello and welcome into the Pole Position right here, your first source for all your NASCAR news and information. Garth McMain's alongside Tommy Poole and Andrew Moore. Got both of them on at the same time this time. We're going high tech. Guys, how are you doing today?
Doing well. How about yourself, Garth?
I'm hanging in there. It's always good talking some NASCAR and being on here to talk with you guys. It's always fun talking, especially with Andrew over there.
Well, everyone loves talking with me, right?
Yeah, you keep telling yourself that. So, we're just going to jump right into things here. We got a pretty short show today, only about 30 minutes for you today. We got a quick preview of both races for you, as well as a chase for the Sprint Cup preview, as that is now set. Who is in the chase? We're going to talk to you about who advances through each segment in our predictions and who wins each race in the chase. So, without further ado, guys, nationwide race, Friday night, the Virginia 529 College Savings 529. Kyle Busch wins that one in, can we call it dominating fashion, or is there a word above dominating? Leads every lap, and really nobody can touch him, other than Ryan Blaney was there for a lot of the race, but couldn't really get around him.
Not only was Ryan Blaney there at the end of the race, Ryan Blaney was there at the beginning of the race, and then Chase Elliott was there towards the end, and he was pretty disappointed at the end that he couldn't catch Busch. Thought he had a little something for him, but still upset that he couldn't get him all the way. But instead, other than dominating factor, I would just tally it up as normal Kyle Busch in the Busch Series, or Nationwide Series, I'm sorry.
Are we just going to name that series after him now?
That's how it was a long time ago, and
Yeah.
I think that's why they changed it, because people were going to get the wrong idea like I was.
Yeah.
But, they should. It's just every time that he gets in the car, if he's not top three, he's dominated that entire race. And I don't think that there is a nationwide race that he has been in that he has not led at least 5 laps in. So domination is every time that he gets in one of those cars.
Definitely. I mean, it's hard to think how a lot of these nationwide regulars can compete against a guy like that. And I know we were having this discussion before the show. You wanted to talk about this on air. Should nationwide drivers be should Cup drivers be in the nationwide series? I say let them be there. You guys don't necessarily agree with me on that. Why is that?
Well, for the same reason that NFL players don't go down to play with the kids in college. If you have a professional driver who's been doing this for a living, you shouldn't be able to go down and just completely smear all the young guys who are trying to work their way up and make a name for themselves.
And I agree with Andrew. I made mention it's different having. Take Kyle Larson, for example, because he's one of this level. If he wants to stay in nationwide for 2 years, kind of do the Childress of the Dillons, his schedule for the Dillons, the 2 years, then move up. Do that, and then their first year in the Cup Series, maybe second year, depending on how they do. If they want to run the Cup Series and the Nationwide Series, that is okay. But for somebody like Kyle Busch, who has no problem taking the car into victory lane in the Cup Series, he should not be in the Nationwide Series. I just feel that it takes away from the kids. Yes, there is a little help from the kids, but the series isn't about him. And the whole reason that they want the Cup drivers to be in the Nationwide Series is to maybe shine more light on the series, but I think it does away from it because, I don't really care for the Nationwide Series too much because I don't like it because every time I turn it on, it's either Kyle Busch dominating, Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski maybe. I just feel like that that it's those top guys and it's going to be a 3-horse race, however many drivers are from the Cup Series. I just feel that that's the outcome, and it just kind of makes it less desirable for me.
But here's the difference, though. Andrew, you mentioned that the difference between NFL and college, but NASCAR and racing as a whole is not structured in that same way. NFL players are not in college, and that's the way that is structured. You can't go back to college playing unless you are in college. Racing's a little bit different because you have the ability to go between these series whether you're in the Cup Series or not. It's not like you get to the Cup Series, you have to stay there until you retire. Some of these guys, as they get closer to retirement, they go back down through the series, racing the Nationwide Series, racing the Truck Series. Ron Hornaday, Mike Skinner do this in the Truck Series. And it gives these younger guys more experience, and they learn a lot more by racing with the Cup guys that they will race with on Sunday in the future. They already know how to race with them. They know what to expect because they know how these guys run. And it gives them that much more experience for when they finally do move to the Cup Series.
I think that's okay that the retired guys or about to retire go down to that. That's fine. Like the whole Elliott Sadler. That's okay. But I do, and even Regan Smith this year. But I don't like, if you are racing every Sunday, I do not see your need to come down on Saturdays. Andrew, what do you want to say?
Well, I'm looking at some stats here. Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, and Joey Logano have scored a combined 48 wins out of a possible 100. So almost half of the races have been won by Sprint Cup drivers. And they're not just Sprint Cup drivers who couldn't get a ride in the Sprint Cup Series. So they're guys who are popular, have made a name for themselves, and they win all the time in the Sprint Cup Series. If you couldn't get a ride in the Sprint Cup Series, then sure, going down and racing with Nationwide is okay, because obviously you aren't a super big name, but you're still working your way up. You're kind of in the middle there. But you can't have these guys coming down and just destroying the younger guys, because the younger guys aren't going to get any experience if they always keep getting their butts handed to them by the professionals. And they're using this opportunity to get another paycheck and add to their trophy collection. So, because racing is an expensive sport, and if you can go down and have an easy win against some little kids, then you have, it's basically pick on someone your own size is how I think about it.
See, here's the difference, though. You look at the cars that these guys are in. They're in Penske cars. They're in Gibbs cars. The young guys are not in those same cars, except for a select few. Look at Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott's in what is essentially a Hendrick car. It's a Hendrick back car, Junior Motorsports.
Well, that's because Chase Elliott is like a freak of nature talent who just came out of nowhere, and now look at how great he is.
But here's the difference. Ryan Blaney can do the same thing in a Penske car. In that same car that Brad Keselowski wins in, Joey Logano wins in, Ryan Blaney has won races in that car. So it's not a matter of
So is Chase Elliott. What's your point?
My point is, it depends on what car you're in. Look at Dylan Kwasniewski. Dylan Kwasniewski is in a Turner Scott Motorsports car, has not had a great season, has not had a bad season, but he's supposed to have a lot of talent. Put him in one of these cars, he's going to be winning races too. It's just a matter of perspective and what kind of equipment you're in, not necessarily which driver is actually in the car.
Now, if Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth aren't taking all the Joe Gibbs spots, maybe Dylan could be in one of those. You know, I think that is the exact point, is the Sprint Cup drivers are taking the seats of the future stars.
But then where are they going to gain their experience from racing with these guys? They're not going to have a clue how to race against these guys until all of a sudden they're in the Cup Series, and it's going to be like a culture shock.
I'm an IndyCar guy, and the Indy Lights Series, we do not have. There's been one case scenario that an actual IndyCar driver has went to the Indy Lights and raced, and that was Jeff Simmons in 1 year, who raced with the Indy Lights Series the entire time. Actually, there's been a couple with Carlos Munoz last year, but those were scenarios that Carlos Munoz and Jeff Simmons were running in the Indy Lights Series all year, and they got called up for one race, and that was the 500. Last year, Munoz got called up for the Detroit race and also the Auto Club race at the end of the season in California. Now, the thing is they still are great. Carlos Munoz, Rookie of the Year. finished top 10, knocking on the door, finished 4th in the 500 this year. Last year, never raced in an Indy car and finished 2nd. I think that, yes, sponsorship is a big deal here, but that should not be the big story. The big story is not viewership. The big story here is futures of the day, and that's how I feel. Garth, I know you're around NASCAR real quick to wrap this up. You're around the community more. Do you think the fans care so much more about the Nationwide being a future star or just another race to watch Kyle Busch and the stars dominate? And even in your point, the stars battling the future stars. Is that something that they enjoy?
I think I think fans don't like so much that the Kyle Busches and the Brad Keselowskis win all the time. But I think a lot of fans don't look at it in the way that they should and see the fact that these young guys are getting experience in battling against these guys. They just see, oh, Kyle Busch is winning another race. Why is he going down there and winning that race when he's going to win the Cup race too? I think fans need to take a step back and realize it's not just Kyle Busch going down to get another paycheck, as Andrew said, or to get another trophy. For them, it's another practice session. It's going to help them out more with the Cup race. The cars are different, but it helps them understand the track a little bit more, where the lines are at, how the tires are working at that track. And it helps these young guys to have more experience with these Cup guys and have more experience battling against better drivers once they move up.
I think if you're going to battle against a Cup driver, you should do it in a Cup race, not have them come down and show you how it's done. You should have to learn the ropes once you get there. Because the Sprint Cup drivers who come down, they get huge sponsors like Monster Energy and stuff like that. And if they just get these cars when they come down. If a Sprint Cup driver wants to come down and race nationwide, that should be okay, but he needs to have his own team.
Now to rebuttal, Andrew and I, how about Brad Keselowski winning last night? He won in Iowa in the Nationwide Series that is like Richmond. So, yes, there is a little resemblance maybe between the cars, and it does help practice. So, what did you make of the race last night?
Keselowski was just so dominant in that race last night. He easily had the best car. He had guys that could touch him a little bit at times. Kevin Harvick more so toward the beginning of the race than Jeff Gordon more toward the end of the race. Clint Boyer at times looked like he might be able to get up there and sneak away a win, but Keselowski's so good on tracks like that, like you mentioned at Iowa and Richmond, that he's going to be a threat no matter what.
Well, and I think that's what last night really meant to everybody. A quote last night from Clint Boyer, he said that they gave it all they had. That's what those boys had. He said the whole point that you race in the season is to get to the chase, but you're in the chase to win a championship. And he said, we are not there yet. I do agree. And last night kind of showed. He went up there, great effort, solid effort by the Michael Waltrip Racing boys. But, his best just was not the best. And that's not saying that they're underfunded or they're not a good team. It's just last night was Brad put on an absolute show. And, and Penske got their 400th win in all major racing. So, and I made mention of this last week too. Penske is really starting to come around and make NASCAR. They're starting to be competitive in NASCAR as well, as much as they were in IndyCar.
Definitely. And one last point we were wanting to make, or that you wanted to make here, I mentioned Kevin Harvick, how he was better towards the beginning of the race, and he kind of got dialed out as they went further through the race. He was up there. He really had what looked like an equal car with Keselowski in the beginning, and it seemed like every pit stop, that car got worse, and by the end of the race, he was a 5th, 6th place car.
Well, and like I said, the race last night, for those who were in the chase, was going to be, what do we have? This is our last point. What do we have as we head into the game, or as we head into the chase? And the point is Harvick is still not there on the crew. They're not there in the pits. They kept, like you said, really a factor. Led 7. They were the only other car besides Brad in the Deuce to really lead laps, and they led 17 of them, and then Brad led the rest. But they put themselves out of it because they could not make the right adjustments. And also what that race showed was Gordon is going to be consistent, and Brad Keselowski may be a new favorite.
Well, that'll about wrap up our Richmond recap for this show, guys. Your quick final thoughts here before we take a break and preview the chase.
I don't have any final thoughts.
I kind of made him in the end that Brad Keselowski may be one of the new contenders.
All right, I would agree with that. And with that, we're going to go ahead and step aside. When we come back, we will preview our Chase Grid brackets. Stay with us. This is the Pole Position. And welcome back to the Pole Position, your first source for all your NASCAR news and information. Garth McMain's here alongside Tommy Poole. Only Tommy Poole now. Andrew has left us.
That's how we like it.
I didn't want to say it.
You guys are jerks!
Well, and he's back. So, all right, Garth. We got the chase. What do you think?
You know, okay, we both filled out chase grids for this segment. Basically, what we're going to do here is we're going to run through, and we picked winners for each race. We're going to talk through each of our winners, and those are the guys that automatically advance through each round. And then we're going to talk about our 4 guys from each round that do not advance. So let's start off with the Challenger round. Chicago, New Hampshire, Dover. Tommy, I have Kevin Harvick winning at Chicago, Ryan Newman at New Hampshire, and Jimmy Johnson at Dover.
I have Brad Keselowski winning at Chicagoland, Ryan Newman at New Hampshire, and Kenseth at Dover.
So the only one we agree on is Newman at New Hampshire, which is interesting since Newman has not won a race yet.
I'm same way with Kenseth here at Dover. I believe that it's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little different now. I think the whole nerves are aside of all the teams that are in. The big picture is to make the chase, and that basically sits with Ryan Newman and Greg Biffle, who were really the only ones that were trying to race for the chase. Kenseth was, but he locked it up pretty early with having as big of a lead as he did. But I just think that that's big for Newman. And now it's not because he's made it, they've made it. And I just liked him with New Hampshire for some reason. Just stuck. Had the gut feeling, so I marked it down.
See, I was thinking that too, because you look back, and Newman's been good at New Hampshire. Newman has won at New Hampshire. He won at least once there. I didn't look back to see if he's won any more than that or not, but I remember him winning with Stuart Haas racing in that 39 car a couple years ago. So he's been good at New Hampshire, and it wouldn't surprise me. In my mind, you can't pick against Jimmy Johnson at Dover. I don't see, as good as he's been at Dover, I don't see any way to pick against him there.
Now, I kind of went against the grain here. Last show, I was on the record for saying, Jimmy Johnson may not be a big threat, but you wait until chase time rolls around. And that I do agree with, and I will back that as we get into the different rounds. But I just believe that I honestly think that he's not going to be a big factor until those last rounds. I think he's going to skate on by, which with a driver of his caliber won't be hard to do. But I just think he's going to be a little off their mojo a little bit. But once it comes around in that 8th round or the championship round, I think that they are really going to come around.
I think it's hard for him to skate by in the chase, given...
I don't think he's going to do it on purpose. I just think that that's just how it is going to be.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, it seems like almost every year you get that thought, and you're like, oh, Jimmy's not been very good lately. He's going to skate through a little bit through the chase. But these 10 races in the chase are 10 of his best tracks, and I don't know that any of them he really does bad at in a year. So I don't see him finishing out of the top 10 in any of these races. So our 4 guys that we have not advancing to the second round, to the contender round, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think we actually agreed on all 4 of these, but they're very interchangeable. I had Denny Hamlin, Eric Almirola, AJ Allmendinger, and Greg Biffle.
Yep, those are my exact.
Hamlin and Biffle are kind of interchangeable. They could go either way. Hamlin's been kind of off his rocker lately, and I don't really see him advancing past that first round. But both of those two are kind of interchangeable with either of the Busch brothers or Casey Kane. And I think we agreed on that as well, that these two both could make it in. One of them could make it in, and the Busch brothers or Kane could easily be out as well. It's just they're kind of all in that same little area.
And the reason I had that is I agree with you on Denny, but I also believe that it is just because he is a Gibbs car.
Mm-hmm.
They're struggling. Showed last night that the new guns really did not make a difference.
Did they use the new guns last night?
See, that's the thing. I
never heard anything about them.
That's why I didn't see a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
Did they use them, or if they did use them, then they didn't? But the thing is did they not use them because of why I said next week? Make it act like it's not a big deal, and then we'll see chase time. But still, I honestly just don't think that it's going to help. Yes, but I don't think that it can make that big of a difference. And we'll see. That's why I've got Kyle Busch in. Kenseth is just his own beast. Last night he had a little brush in the wall, but that was driver error. He's been so much better than all his teammates, and for reasons of so be it. But that's just how he's been. So I don't categorize him as that, but I do categorize Kyle Busch and Matt Kenseth under that circumstance.
Second round, the contender round. 3 races there: Kansas, Charlotte, Talladega. Talladega, as we know, always the wild card. This round is so hard for me to handicap on who will advance and who won't because of Talladega. You could pick 8 drivers that you think are the 8 best drivers to go into that next round. All 8 of them could get caught up in a wreck at Talladega, and then the 4 guys you have eliminated all make it to that next round because of that wreck. But
or because those 4 guys win at Talladega.
That's true too. So I have Jeff Gordon winning at Kansas. I have him sweeping Kansas for the year. Jimmy Johnson winning at Charlotte. He's been good at Charlotte ever since he's been in the Cup Series, basically. And Matt Kenseth at Talladega. Matt Kenseth is a very good restrictor plate driver recently, and I think, at least for me, I think that's where he gets his first win this season.
I agree with you on Kansas with Gordon. Charlotte, I believe, keeping it in the Hendricks camp, but I think Casey Kane's going to pull it out, and I think that's the only way he can move to the. That's my upset of this whole shebang. I think that's the only way that he will move into the eliminator round of 8. So I have him at Charlotte, and then I have the restrictor plate king at Talladega being Dale Earnhardt Jr.
Now, let me ask you this with Talladega. Why Jr.? He was not super great at Talladega back in the spring. What makes you think that he can win at Talladega this time?
Because Talladega in the spring for Junior meant nothing. He already had his win in. The same thing for Harvick after Phoenix last year. It meant nothing. It was a practice run. Maybe they did some hodgepodge things here, there, and especially because his teammates weren't locked in yet. So then maybe they were trying different things to give back to the team. So that was my theory behind it. It may be for that reason too, but I just believe that you cannot, once you get to this point, you've got to throw out the past season out the window. Because, maybe there are going to be moves that drivers make now. Maybe they don't make those moves because it is now. And that's all just driver preference and what the driver is capable of themselves.
Now, 4 guys that get eliminated in this round. It gets harder and harder as you go on
does.
because you get more into that core group of guys that are all the best guys this year. And I had to make some tough decisions with this one. My first 3 here were not very hard because I think they barely made it into this round. That was Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, and Casey Kane. My fourth guy was hard because I had to decide between him and another two that I weren't sure were going to make it into the next round, but I don't think Joey Logano gets past this round.
I've got Joey Logano skating by. I do not have my four that are out are Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch, Kurt Busch, and then Ryan Newman. I just think that the whole reason Ryan Newman even makes it into the contender round of 12 is because of the win at New Hampshire. Point structure, I don't think so. I didn't think that one was too hard. The next two are going to be hard for me.
Mm-hmm. Now let's recap who we've got going into the Eliminator round just to refresh everybody's memory of who is left here. In the Eliminator round, I have Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Brad Keselowski, Ryan Newman, and Carl Edwards.
Okay, I've got Jeff Gordon, Casey Kane Jr., Brad Keselowski, Kevin Harvick, Jimmy Johnson, Joey Logano, and Matt Kenseth.
All right, 3 races. Martinsville, Texas, Phoenix. I have Jeff Gordon winning again at Martinsville. I have Brad Keselowski winning at Texas, and I have Jimmy Johnson at Phoenix.
I have Jimmy Johnson at Martinsville, Jeff Gordon at Texas, and Kevin Harvick at Phoenix.
See, I could have gone either way at Martinsville. I thought Johnson, and I could have gone either way with that. They're both really good at Martinsville, and really in my mind it was a toss-up, and I finally just went with Gordon, but I could have just as easily gone with Johnson on that as well.
And I don't think that either of those two are hurting for that win. Mm-hmm. I think they can make it either way.
Right.
And if they don't win at Martinsville, one of them is going to win at Texas or Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
Gordon and Johnson are going to be locked into that for sure. I think it would be a huge shocker if those two do not make it.
Right. My 4 eliminated in the Eliminator round. Matt Kenseth, Kevin Harvick, Ryan Newman, Carl Edwards.
I've got Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, Casey Kane, and the boy that I've backed so many times, Matt Kenseth.
So, for the championship round in Homestead, on my side, that leaves Jeff Gordon, Brad Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson, Dale Earnhardt Jr.
I've got Johnson, Gordon, Harvick, and Jr.
So we've got close to the same. We interchange Keselowski and Harvick. Who's your champion?
My champion is basically the second choice because you've picked the first choice. And the reason that I did not stick with my first choice is because there's so much of a toss-up for me. I say the 2014 Sprint Cup champion is Dale Earnhardt Jr. I really think that he is going to pull through. I think that he understands how big this season is and that it is this year or bust for him. And I think everybody in that camp agrees. The fans will back behind him. And you saw what he did this year with momentum behind him. Mm-hmm. And I really think that can continue as we go into the chase.
See, to me, it's such a toss-up between these 4, and I went with Jeff Gordon for 2 reasons. One, because when I think it was Dr. Jerry Punch that interviewed Gordon after the race last night and asked him what he thinks his odds are right now with where his team is for that drive for 5, and Gordon basically said, I'm very confident in it. I think this is my best season in years, and I love this team that I'm with. He's got that momentum on his side. He's got a great team. And to me, out of the 4 that I had, he's got the best record at Homestead. He has won at Homestead. The other 3 have not. And I think in terms of who has the best record at Homestead and who is best at Homestead, I think Gordon wins the championship, and Jeff Gordon is your 2014 champion.
And he's the opposite of Kevin Harvick as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because no matter the car Gordon's got this season, and it's more so post-Indianapolis,
mm-hmm.
Which is such a big win for him. He's the opposite of Harvick because he can pull into the pits and he comes out a much better car.
Mm-hmm.
And Harvick just does not have that right now. And I think it's a fluke that he would get to the champion. If he gets to the championship race, it's because he won in Phoenix.
Definitely. Well, that'll do it for us on tonight's show. Thank you for listening, and be sure to tune in on Thursday for our preview of Chicago.